We now know how the Crusaders were challenging the Islamic world from the previous video, right? Unfortunately, the enemy to Islamic empires were not only the Crusaders. On the other hand, the Mongols also posed great threats to the nomadic tribes, and their series of attacks almost came hand in hand along with the Crusaders. Okay, for the Crusaders, at least we know what were their motivations to go on a crusade. But what about the Mongols? Who are they? And what was their game plan? In this video, let's look at the basic background of the Mongol Empire. Salam guys, thank you for clicking on this video. It could be by chance that you are here, or could be you are following the sequels from past episodes of the Ottoman Empire stories. Nevertheless, thank you so much for your support to Dandelia's story. We are happy to share more stories related to Islam. It's not going to be from a historian perspective, just storytelling based on the passion to feed our minds with enriching stories and maybe reinforce our faith. So if you find that there are any facts that are inaccurate, please feel free to leave a comment and please pardon us for that, because the stories we tell are based on what we read, and sometimes there could be different versions or schools of thoughts. The aim of Dandelia's story is actually just to gather strengths by learning from stories of Islamic nation of yesterday. The strength and faiths by our great ancestors is too far-fetched compared to our living today. Sometimes when we read up or just hearing stories about their struggle and fights, it may seem too cliche. At times, it feels like we are reading about some fiction superhero stories. It may sound impossible and unbelievable to be achieved by anyone of our times today, but history has proven it all. So it's definitely worth hearing these medieval stories to at least gather 50% of their endurance. For us in our times, that is good enough. Without further ado, let's dive into the story about the invader that was described as one of the most powerful enemies to Islamic states in the 13th century, the Mongols. In the 12th century, before the Mongol Empire was formed, the East Asian steppe was the home to scattered groups of Mongol and Turkic nomads led by Huns. These people herded sheep, cattle, yaks and camels, They lived in felt tents and they will move around between different seasons. Like in summer, they will be at a certain steppe campsite. When the season changes, the area might not be suitable anymore to live in. Like for example, in winter, they will move to a more suitable campsite. Because of this kind of living conditions, these nomadic groups often fought with each other over lands and territories. Then, there was a great change under a powerful Mongol leader. His name was Temujin. Temujin lost his father at an early age. He grew up in poverty, although he was fatherless during his childhood, but that actually made him more independent and stronger. He quickly rose to power by making strategic alliances with other leaders. Temujin was known as someone who endorsed unity. In the early years of the 13th century, he brought together a majority of the nomadic people of the Mongol tribes. Unlike other Huns, Temujin was brilliant. He promoted soldiers based on their merit. He also distributed the spoils fairly among them. His most genius move was to scatter the nomads he conquered among his own soldiers. Why was this a brilliant move? You just imagine, if he conquered a certain area of lands, then he put together the different groups of nomads, don't you think they will gather forces against him? So, Temujin thought out these details very well. By putting his soldiers amongst them, it could avoid them joining forces against him. So it's within his control. He can prevent rebellions. This ingenious innovation made him unbeatable. By 1206, he had united the people of the felt tents and changed his name to Genghis Khan, which means world conqueror. The Mongols do not really have a religion, but they believed in the spirits of nature and their ancestors. Overall, they believed in the sky god Tengri. Genghis Khan believed that Tengri ordered him to conquer the entire world. Anyone who resisted the Mongols was resisting Tengri's wills, and for this, they had to die. Under Genghis Khan, the Mongols first conquered northern China and the eastern Islamic lands. The Mongols came and destroyed everything. It was described that if we were to accumulate all the miseries of Muslims since the times of Prophet Adam ﷺ till today, it will not match the miseries and sufferings of the Muslims when they were faced with the Mongols. The period was too devastating. In 1219, Genghis Khan turned his force of 700,000 soldiers to the west and quickly conquered Bukhara, Samarkand in Uzbekistan, Balkan in Afghanistan, Meth, the capital of the Great Seljuk Empire in Turkmenistan, and Neshabur in present-day Iran. He slaughtered every living thing. Genghis Khan died in August 1227. After his death, the area enjoyed a brief interval from invasion, but it did not last long. His grandson, Hulagu Khan, later arrived to continue Genghis' legacy of dominating the lands. Under the leadership of Hulagu, the Mongols gained control of the land from the far east all the way sweeping to the west. He marched on to Baghdad with 200,000 Tatars. In 1258, the Tatars tragically entered Baghdad on the day of Ashura. They caused lots of bloodshed and ruin. They were busy killing the Islam in Baghdad for 40 days. Rivers of blood flowed in the streets and all the alleys were filled with dead bodies. Hundreds of thousands of people were put to the sword. Al-Musta'sim, who was the last Abbasid caliph, was murdered. The Mongol or Tatar, they left the countryside totally ruined. While in Baghdad, Hulagu destroyed Iraq's canal head works. In that period, the material and artistic production of centuries were tragically swept away. Iraq became a neglected frontier province ruled by the Mongols. What you should know also is that the Mongol Empire life wasn't just war, pillage and destruction. Once the Mongols conquered a territory, they don't meddle with its internal politics. They use local administrators to govern them. The positive side was the Mongols allowed all religions to flourish as long as the leaders prayed for them. That's why it was common to see during the Seljuk or Mamluk Empire, the Sultan's guards and knights in the palace consisted of the Mongols amongst them. They routinely captured artisans, scholars and engineers. Why? Because they appreciated what those specialists could do. They appreciated their talents. Sadly, they forced them to settle down across Asia to continue with their work. The most valuable produce in the empire was gold brocade, which took silk from China, gold from Tibet, and weavers from Baghdad. By doing this, trade flourished along the Silk Route. Succession of the Great Khan did not automatically go to the eldest son, unlike the Sultanate or royal. It allowed brothers, uncles and cousins to vie for leadership. So by the 1260s, Genghis Khan's grandsons were in a full-blown civil war. They were fighting over inheritance and divided the realm into 4 separate empires. These are Kublai Khan or the Yuan dynasty in China, the Ilkhanate in Iran, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Golden Horn in the Eastern Europe. In China, Kublai Khan's Yuan dynasty was remembered as a golden age of science and culture. The Mongols could maintain their rule better in China than elsewhere because of the strong Chinese tradition of centralized state power. This tradition somehow provided a stable framework of government. In Iran, the Ilkhanate launched the development of new monumental architecture and Persian miniature painting. In Central Asia, the Chagatai Khanate brought forth leaders like Tamerlane, who founded the Mongol Empire in India. In 1401, Tamerlane sacked Baghdad and massacred many of its people. He killed thousands of Iraqis and devastated hundreds of towns. In Iraq, there was political chaos, severe economic depression, and social disintegration due to the Mongol invasions. Baghdad, which was once a rapid center of trade, lost its commercial importance. In Eastern Europe, the Golden Horde ruled for years. It was proven to be the most enduring part of the Mongol Empire. However, the Golden Horde began to decline significantly in the mid-14th century. especially after the Black Death outbreak. I'm sure you have heard about the Black Death tragedy, right? But for the benefit of those who haven't heard about it or not sure about this incident, let me just briefly describe the Black Death. The Black Death was a devastating global epidemic, just like COVID-19, but it wasn't worldwide spread like COVID-19. It was a plague that struck Europe and Asia in the mid-1300s. The plague arrived in Europe in October 1347. What happened was 12 ships arrived from the Black Sea and docked at the Sicilian port of Messina. People who were gathered on the docks were surprisingly horrified because most sailors aboard the ships were dead when they arrived. Those who were alive were very ill and covered in black boils that oozed blood and pus. Sicilian authorities quickly ordered the fleet of death ships out of the harbor, but it was too late. Over the next 5 years, the Black Death killed more than 20 million people in Europe, almost 1/3 of the continent's population. So back to the Golden Horde story, what we are trying to say is that the Golden Horde had begun to fall significantly in the mid-14th century. However, the impact after the Black Death outbreak made its situation worse, and the Golden Horde finally broke apart into smaller fragments of territories in the 15th century. Although Mongol Empire lasted for a short while, the Mongols left a legacy of world domination that remains unmatched till today. After Kublai Khan died in 1294, the Mongol Empire started to fall apart. Many of his successors were incompetent. None of them were able to reach Kublai's achievements. From 1300 onwards, the Han's disputes over succession continued, and it weakened the central government in China. There were several recurring rebellions in China. The Yuan dynasty fell in 1368. It was overthrown by the Chinese rebel leader Zhu Yuanzhang, who established the Ming dynasty and became known as the Mongol Empire. By the end of the 14th century, most of Anatolia was controlled by various Anatolian beyliks due to the collapse of the Seljuk dynasty. We mentioned before, after the death of Sultan Malik Shah, the Seljuk sultans started to decline. As a result of this, the Turkmen beyliks were under the control of the Mongols, until later when the Ottoman ruler Osman I came about. That was why, if we read some stories about Osman, there was mention about Osman rebelling against Seljuk Sultan. Not because he was a rebel to the Seljuk state, but he was developing an Islamic state and he wanted it to be free from control of the Mongols. Those Anatolian beyliks at that time, they did not mint coins in the names of their own leaders. Osman I was the first Turkish ruler who minted coins in his own name in the 1320s. The coin he minted bears the legend "Minted by Osman, son of Ertugrul." The minting of coins was something exclusive according to Islamic practice. It symbolizes the sovereignty of a ruler. So we can conclude that Ottoman Empire was an independent empire. It was free of Mongol ruling and was a stand-alone dynasty ruled by their own sultans. There were a total of 36 sultans in the Ottoman Empire from 1300 to 1922. Subsequently, the Sultanate of the Ottoman Empire was finally abolished. The Ottoman ruler at that time was Abdülmecit II, and he was elected as caliph by the new government. The empire was then declared as the Turkish Republic when the caliphate was also abolished. But hold on, we are not going to discuss the downfall of the Ottoman Empire as yet. We are still at the beginning episodes of the rise of the Ottoman Empire. In the next video, we will share the life story about the father of Osmanlis, the man who opened up, planned, and initiated the path before his son developed a state and eventually formed a strong and long-standing empire. A courageous and religious man called Ertugrul Ghazi. His people called him Ertugrul Bey. So hit on the bell icon so that you get notified when we post the next video. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like and share this video and also subscribe to Dandelia's Story for more of such sharing. Thank you once again, may God bless you and see you soon in the next video. Assalamualaikum.